So tonight I'd like to talk about how to put together a good sound system for your home or even maybe for your business. And this is for people who just don't know anything about audio. And most people I see all day don't seem to really know what sound quality is, what good music is, and what how they could have a better sound and music experience on a daily basis, whether it's at home or in their business or restaurant and so forth. So these are just some really basic ideas that everyone should know, even if you don't know any engineering or don't know anything about hi-fi systems and so forth. The main point is to prevent gross errors that people make on a regular basis when it comes to enjoying music or enjoying sound in general. Well, let's start with our little program, little music for the program. This is Vivaldi turned into the blues. So this was our little musical interlude. Going back to the points I was going to bring up, um, well, you having a good sound system is a huge part of enjoying music in general and sound in general. And number one thing that we need to just understand and put up with is that real acoustic instruments, a real guitar, a real instrument has a sound that has a certain magic that electronic sound produced by most high systems, audio systems, even even if you had the ultimate audio system at home, because the recordings are made for the public and are made to be sweet for the public, sound good to the public. They're not made to sound perfect. They're hiding a lot of the frequencies. They're trying to make it too sweet. So there are a few things that you don't need to think about high, digital engineering, Bluetooth, this and that. What I'm going to talk about is how you can set up a very inexpensive system for under $100 at home and enjoy music, whether you're streaming music on your 4K TV, let's say from the YouTube or anything. You can really enjoy the sound a lot better. So the number one thing is that most recordings that are put out there is most recordings, commercial recordings, have lower bass and lower treble, meaning the high frequencies and the low frequencies are a bit lower, and the middle frequencies are raised, bumped up. I call it mid-rangey. Basically, the sound it sounds too much like radio frequencies around 2 hertz, 2000 hertz, 3000 hertz, where they have the most energy and the most punch. In order to affect the masses, they have been boosted. So the first thing you do when you buy a stereo or in your car, you turn up your bass and you turn up your treble. You want to do justice to the high frequencies and the bass frequencies, so the your frequency profile becomes less humpy and more flat, as engineers would call it. Another thing that's very important is the angle. If you have speakers, even great ones, but if it's not pointing at where you're sitting down, that is a huge deal. Most people just in restaurants or in home, they just put speakers wherever and they don't get to enjoy. Difficulty is that there's really just a few sweet spots that speakers have. If you're sitting here down, this is my dog here. If you're sitting down on the couch here and this is your TV, your speakers need to be at a certain angle to you. Now 22, 30, but at least they should be focusing in the sweet spot where you're sitting. Usually, say if you sit here, In fact, if your spouse doesn't like the loud music you listen to, you could focus them on this point here. Um, Depending on what kind of configuration you have, you could change. But if you cannot have the speakers even here, and if you're someone who wants to enjoy good sound, at least have one of these speakers a little bit closer to you. In fact, at my home, I have one speaker right here behind, right into my ear, and the other one's here. It's not the ultimate, it's not the optimum setup, but because I do not want to disturb anyone else in the household, if I want to hear things clearly and I have to turn it up, I have it right kind of close to me. It doesn't have to be right in your ear. It can be hurtful. Ideal situation is to pay attention to the sweet spot and to have the two speakers pointing at where you are gonna be, or the two people or three people. Unfortunately, if the speaker is pointing down from the ceiling, if it's pointing the other way, people put their speakers all over wherever they can. If it's in the wall here, pointing out this way, coming out of the wall, that's not really good. Um, but at the minimum, even if you have a cheap receiver and a cheap speaker, at least you can bring a cable and have a small speaker close to you, so you're hearing the sound without the sound getting bounced all over and getting noisy. Um, Again, I'm not here talking about high-end systems. In fact, I think it's kind of a waste of money to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on high-end speaker, because most people, A, are not listening to really good music or good recordings that have good content, both compositionally, execution, and recording, and also uh, most people are not paying attention to the angle. So that what you're if you're playing a lot of music that's not really that good to begin with, and that's a sad thing. The recordings, the compositions are weak, the executions are poor. A lot of commercial music out there is not very good. The audio systems, they master these CDs to make them sweet for the masses. Um, then even if you buy a very fancy consumer level audio system, they are pitched at the masses too. So they have a certain frequency profile to appeal to that kind of person who they think will be buying the stuff. Um, all these Bluetooth things, the small ones, the tiny ones, or even the larger Bose ones. I bought a few of these Bose ones that are like about 8 inches tall and so forth. The sound did not compare coming through the Bluetooth. I did not at all compare to just some old Infinity speakers I had. I think you can buy them at thrift shops for like $20 each. Um, the receiver, you can buy these receivers on eBay, or best thing is thrift stores, because a lot of people are donating right now, and these are 20 years old, 10 years old. People are just getting rid of them because they're all falling for the Bluetooth sound and so forth. If you don't have a huge home and you don't want to have multi-room sound and so forth, you could just have one of these. It's better than nothing. Again, the solution I'm giving is something that would be a lot better than um, nothing. Just listening from your TV speaker. Your TV speakers are usually not very good. Um, unless you spend a few $1,000s. But even then, you cannot expect perfection. You cannot expect a great frequency profile. Again, those are pitched at the consumer. These things are, I don't know, $20. They have digital fiber optic outputs. You can take the fiber up. You can buy some fiber optic cables on TV. The ones that are within the past 10 years. Take one from your TV, input it into the speaker. You're playing YouTube on your TV. It goes into the optical input of your receiver, or if you don't have even RCA cables, are okay. And then you just take some old school wires. If you have construction wire, the thicker the wire, the better. Don't spend money on wires. If you have construction wires around, or at, I don't know, thrift stores or garage sales, you see some wire. is good, even construction wire. The thicker the better, but if you don't have, double a phone cable and just use a phone cable. Infinity speakers, make sure these are at least like not 3 inches, but 12-inch types, 15-inch tall, something of that size minimum. Depends on the room, of course, but you don't want to usually have huge speakers, and you don't want to have too tiny of a speaker. But we're talking about just really taking what you have and spending $100 instead of listening to your TV, running the audio through Pioneer, Yamaha, any of these brands within the past 10, 15 years, even older ones if you care. But it's good to have the digital output. If not, some of them have HDMI, so you can take your HDMI cable from your TV and input it into the receiver, and then just old school wires that you could connect to these, or sometimes it's RCA, out goes to your speakers. So the most important thing is one, the angle, what angle, and then B, the treble, bass and treble. You want to boost up bass, boost up treble. It makes the sound a lot more real. Ideally, you want it to sound as close as possible to you being there hearing the music, as if the performers are alive in front of you. And by doing that, by boosting the bass and treble, it brings more life and presence to the sound. Again, but none of these. Bottom line, it's a stereo system. It's an audio system, and you cannot expect commercial audio systems made for consumers to sound like studio quality recording setup that some studios have, and it's not as good as actually listening to the performers in front of you. Um, when I never go to Royce Hall or the Disney, um, Dorothy Chandler Disney Hall in downtown or any of those, because they all use they call it they basically use a PA system. They call it reinforcement, I think. They are using electronics to boost the sound, and it never is that good unless you're really in the front. Sometimes you can be in the front rows and you're still not hearing, especially in rock concerts or pop concerts and so forth. It's so boosted. Even jazz places, a lot of times you go to jazz places and they're really cranking up so you're not hearing the instruments in it. And it's really sad because you have real loud instruments like the saxophone does not need, in a small, for 100 people, you don't need amplification. You don't need that for 50 people. It's better to keep it live without electronics. So yeah, you go to places and they're using, even at UCLA and so forth, you're spending $100 on a ticket, and what you're getting is electronic sound and not hearing the instruments. Cost versus quality, you would think the costlier something, the better the quality. Not necessarily. Sometimes you're paying more to have more convenience, to have integration with your software and so forth. By the way, there are little dongles, Bluetooth dongles that you can buy that you just attach it to the receiver, and it picks up your Bluetooth signal, and you can connect your cell phone or your iPod or whatever through the Bluetooth through this dongle, and stream music through your phone or your computer, and stream it through your stereo system. So that does exist too. Logitech, I think, has one that I'm using. Speaker angle, I mentioned. Speaker size, don't buy something that's 5 inches. I don't care if it's $150 Bose speaker. I tested these, the 8-inch ones or whatever, 7-inch ones. They were really not as good. And Bluetooth by itself kind of reduces the audio quality. Now, yeah, modern stereos have a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of emphasis on Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, multi-room, multi-channel, surround sound. You really don't need surround sound. Surround sound and all these gimmicks are just there to fool the average Joe. Again, with pretty cheap speakers and receivers, you can have very good sound. You can have a pretty good uh, ex- music experience, sound experience. Um, Now, modern recordings here, we have a lot of editing and compression. All these things kind of take the life out of a recording. My favorites are 78 RPM records from Latin America and 45 RPMs from Iran. I have a few of these. In fact, I can share. I've digitized some of them. They don't really have the same life, really. Um, I could put a link for some of the ones I've digitized. They don't have the same life. These recordings, 78 RPMs and 45 RPMs. In America, they were already by the 50s, when the 60s, when the 45 RPM became common. They were already doing compression and editing and multi-takes, and so it didn't really have you really didn't feel like the performers are standing in front of you playing. Whereas like with 78 RPMs, like Tito Puente, I mentioned, a whole bunch of other people, it is amazing what you really feel transported through time and space. I mentioned that most commercial recordings are mid-range, meaning from all the frequencies, the middle frequencies are boosted, and that's why the treble and bass that I mentioned, even better if you have EQ, use EQ to boost the high range EQ. I don't know, let's say frequency response, I should say, or just EQ. Let's Google EQ, see what images we get. Oops, shopping. Emotional intelligence. Oh God, what nonsense. Yeah, okay, this is Daniel Goleman's nonsense. There's only one kind of intelligence. There's no such thing as emotion. Anyways, I shouldn't get into this. Um, yeah, EQ is equalizer. Maybe I should type equalizer. So yeah, most commercial music is made to be stronger and higher in this higher volume here in the mid range. So what you usually do, if you have an EQ, you boost up the bottom. Test, experiment, and see what sounds most real to you after you do this. Um, a speaker size, type of music. I, um, I play a lot of classical music, but I enjoy playing them. I usually don't listen to classical music, um, but that's just my taste. Classical music, 18th, 19th century. Overall, if you listen to it too much, I think it's a little bit depressing. Listen to Richard Wagner, and you'll be depressed if you listen to it for a few hours a day. You're gonna go nuts. Um, I enjoy playing them, especially because I play the music a lot slower than usually played out, and that's just my taste. I feel like if the music has a lot of content, it's good to slow it down and play along and give it more melisma and enjoy the details more. But that's just my taste. I'm going to put a link for a bunch of jazz. I have a directory of jazz MP3 files that you can download. Okay, I'm going to put a link to listen to. They're more positive, they're happier. I like 1930s, 20s, 30s, 40s music. Um, they're warm, they're great for restaurants, they're great for parties. You have to pick and choose from the files I'm putting there to see which ones you like, of course. Some don't have great audio quality because they're old recordings, but there's something fun, and it was almost like a different era. Truly, with the people, human beings were different, it seems, in the 1930s. There was on one hand, we had the Big Depression, but On the other hand, the whole invention of jazz, or the coming about of jazz, was such a explosion of new ideas and positivity that classical music and romantic music of the 19th century didn't have. Well, ambient noise, how much noise do you have in your home? That's another thing to consider. Um, it's good to eliminate whatever sources of noise, windows, seals, and to kind of improve the noise you get from outside and so on. And for your restaurant, you could technically take the same idea and just use more speakers. Um, Here, I didn't talk about wattage and ohms, and you know, but pretty much if you have a good um, receiver, like I mentioned, you could put four, five, six um, speakers, 50-watt speakers, or even less, depending on how many you want to put. It's like water through a garden hose. If this is giving you 700 watts, you can imagine 7 times 100-watt speakers. If you have smaller speakers, you can take the same idea and basically take more feeds from your speakers, from the speaker output, and feed more speakers. You don't have to point it at people in a general way. You could distribute the sound, and but have better sound than just having one or two speakers in a large restaurant or something. Anyways, these are just really thrifty and down to earth ways of genuinely revolutionizing your listening experience. I mentioned this. These things are convenient if you're going around out and about, or even in my yard. I have a stereo system. I put it in the shed, or sometimes I have it in one of the bedrooms that the speakers are out and I can control it with my Bluetooth. So I don't even need these things. Don't have the same sound quality. I had the Bose version of these tiny ones. I wasn't impressed with it really. Um, I'm gonna put a link for the Logitech Bluetooth receiver that I bought on Amazon, so you can have that too. Anything else? Well, the stereos. You don't need these massive things. It does not have to be that. People are so sold on such ideas that you need to spend thousands of dollars. I don't think so. I've seen people who've spent tens of thousands of dollars on their audio system, and it's still not very good. Um, the system has all the bells and whistles, and because of that, it's malfunctioning, and things are not. Um, you can't even play any music on it because there's malfunction going on, or it's too complicated for you to learn how to operate them. Anyways, Infinity speakers are good. JBL are good speakers. Um, you know, go to your local thrift store and see what you find. Remember to use EQ and the angle. That's that, and I hope this was helpful. If you like this video, put a like on it and share it with people, and also let me know how it worked out and whether you had success. Take care. Bye-bye.